Hello to my fellow booktubers. I thought I would give you a reading update. Um, Fortunately, I won't be. I'm working tomorrow, so I won't be able to. Well, I'll have time because I probably only work for close to 5 hours, and so that's hence why I am sticking to part time because I don't know if I'm unless I absolutely have to. I don't know if I'm ready to do full time. But I didn't do as much reading this weekend because as I said my parents as I think I've already said this in a previous video. My parents were out of town this weekend, so I ended up I transported myself downstairs, and even though I'm perfectly content being by myself, in fact I love being by myself for at least a few days. Hi, Rascal. I don't like the quiet either, so what I end up doing is turning on the TV, and of course the TV can sidetrack you. But yesterday I did exercise a little bit of self-control, and I sat outside on our back porch and did a little bit of reading, of course, so it is, where is that? Oh. And I read two more chapters of The Count of Monte Cristo. I'm moving very slowly in this book, of course, not as fast as Jennifer Brooks. She's at the halfway point, and I'm a little envious. But again, I know I could solve that problem easily. I know it's my own fault. I let myself get distracted by TV, and I don't just spend hours reading. I don't spend my time just reading books. So I can't really blame anyone but myself on that front. But in chapters 30, 31 and or 30 30 and 31, Edmund disguised, it has helped his former boss, Monsieur Morel, his family, who with their financial troubles because Morel was in debt. He was indebted particularly to the prison inspector. So Edmund helped him with that and gave, just like he gave Carterus and his wife the gem, he gave some money or some of his treasure, I think, to Monsieur Morel. So all their financial troubles are now at an end. And then in chapter 31, we meet a friend of Mercedes' son Albert. Decides to go on a hunting trip overseas and ends up deciding to check out the Isle of Mount Monte Cristo, where he meets a group of pirates, including the mysterious Sinbad the sailor, who also sent a message, I think, to Morel's daughter, I think, if I remember correctly. And he invites him to his home, to his little cave-like dwelling, which is nicely fashioned, look like an actual regular home. I think it's a cave. And they start talking and stuff, and that's basically it. Not much really happened. Let's see me. I don't know if he invited him to his neck of the woods or something, but they became kind of friends. And I'm guessing that Sinbad the sailor is actually Edmund, again, disguised. that's I mean, it's the only thing that either that or this is just a really random thing they put in that Dumas put in the story, but I highly doubt that. I'm guessing that, again, Edmund's disguise is this Sinbad guy, the sailor. And it's funny, because I guess the name Sinbad comes from 1001 Nights, or Arabian Nights. So Franz, Albert's friend, said, because when Sinbad was like, I can't tell you my real name, but you may call me Sinbad, Franz was like, okay then, well, when he asked his name, he was like, well, you may as well call me Aladdin. So I thought that was kind of amusing. Yeah, that's the problem with reading only 2 chapters. It looks like there's a lot going on in that chapter, but if you really sum up the 2 chapters, not a lot goes on. I feel like I need to get back into reading like 4 chapters of reading. It's just that I'm, again, reading so many books at the same time, which I really shouldn't be doing, because I'm not a fast reader like some of my other favorite booktubers. So I should just be reading, like, focusing on. But then sometimes I get I want to, like, explore other stories. And I also sometimes just feel guilty because there are books that I neglected because I've had the urge to read them, but then I'm like, okay, I want to read something else now. Okay, so I also finally was able to read another chapter of I Captured the Castle. And Rose and Cassandra have been spending time with Neil and Simon. And Rose is still trying to get Simon, is still hoping and praying that Simon will propose to her. And Stephen has gone to London to get his picture taken, and Rose is not that keen on it. So I still don't know I'm not sure if Stephen is going to be the person that she's going to realize she's in love with, or Neil. I'm leaning more towards Neil right now because I kind of like him a little bit better than Stephen. But I don't know. I still don't know. So, but finally, when they are spending the evening, the foursome they've been going to the beach and stuff like that, and then the foursome one evening are hanging out together, and Simon and Neil have decided they want to tour the grounds a little bit, and they go to their little tower, their tower, which provides a beautiful view, and Cassandra is kind of struggling with coming up with a way to give her sister and Simon some time alone, but finally suggests that they go swimming. Her and Neil go swimming despite the fact that she gets chilled very easily. And, which, in fact, she said when Neil suggested they all go, she's like, oh, Rose gets chilled so easily, she gets cold so easily, so they end up going swimming. They actually have a fun time together, and it takes her a little bit of time. And trust me, I know that getting in water that's freezing cold, how hard that is, and you have to basically dive under the water and just get used to it. But I do know it's hard because I used to have a pool a private pool before we moved here. We had a pool that was in the backyard, and it was under a whole bunch of trees in the corner of the backyard. And that pool got freezing. I mean, I know pool water is supposed to be cold, but there's only so much you can take of cold. But they actually have a good time, and then they come back. I mean, they decide to come out. And when Cassandra's getting the towels for them to dry off. And there's this whole thing about how they don't have enough towels because they're not that well off. When she goes to get the towels, she overhears the conversation between Rose and Simon and overhears Simon proposing to Rose, and then she's like, and then it turns out you find out that she was like, she wanted him to kiss her first before she said yes, and she also was like, you need to shave, because Because again, with the beard thing, I don't get that. Why are they? I'm not a big fan of men with super hairy faces, but they really don't like that beard. And then what's interesting is Cassandra kind of observes that without the beard, Simon looks younger, but that's not. Like, I feel like a lot of men, if they've had a beard and they all of a sudden shave it, it does make them look younger. But the thing that I think is notable is she says it makes them look a lot more vulnerable. And I think she says something along the lines of not as like confident or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what was said, but so, and then of course when they find Cassandra is very happy for her sister, of course, but Neil is not so happy because he's like, your sister's a gold digger. And I think I'm pretty sure he's right. I know that the only reason she wants to marry him is because he's well off. They're wealthy, and Simon and Neil are wealthy, and Cassandra and Rose aren't. And it doesn't help that their father has not written anything in I don't know how long. So, but she does tell Cassandra that she does love him, and even if she didn't, she would still marry the guy. And despite her being a little protective and loyal to her sister, she kind of admits that Neil is not entirely wrong. And she goes to find out, and that's when Rose tells her that she would marry him either way. And that she has grown to love Simon. And then they end up Rose goes with Simon and his mother to London. Preparing for the wedding. And, my opinion of Rose is she's very vain and very selfish. She's a bit of spoiled. And I feel like Cassandra's kind of under her sister's shadow, I feel like. And she will always be loyal. Even if my sister was kind of selfish, was selfish, I would still be loyal to her too because she's my sister. And I'm reading another. I also read a little bit of today. I just read a little bit of Middlemarch. Let me go ahead and talk about that. Where it's I feel like it's kind of the same thing between the two Brooks sisters, Dorothea and Cecilia, where Cecilia doesn't really stand up to her sister that often, and she's kind of under her shadow. Now, the difference being, of course, that Dorothea is the one who's a little more book smart and down to earth and more intellectual, while in I Capture the Castle, it's Cassandra, the one within the shadow is the book smart one, the one who wants to be a writer and everything, and is more intellectual. So it's kind of interesting that the sister relationships are kind of similar, which is good because I actually have expressed interest in wanting to read more books about sisters, because, well, for personal reasons, I am a younger sister, so I want to read more books about things that I can relate to. I want to be interested in the plot. Like, I'm very much a plot-driven reader, and I want to be intrigued by the story, and not just read a story that happens to have a story about sisters. I want also like the story that I'm reading. I am kind of interested in the not Witcher series. Witcher series is a totally different thing. The Witch World series, or I can't remember what the series is called. I've heard so many people talk about that series. Wind Witch is one of the books. The Truth Witch is the other one. Blood Witch. I think Blood Witch is the one that just came out. I can't remember what the series is actually called. But I'm thinking about reading that one too. But let me go ahead. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. I did not realize it's not like it's only 16 chapters, so it's really not that long of a book, and it's, let me see how many pages. 343 pages. And I'm trying, even though I'm looking at the last page, I'm trying not to look, because I have seen the last line, where there's the I love you moment. And I'm guessing it's someone says or either Cassandra says it or someone says I love you to her. So I don't know who it is, and I don't want to spoil myself. But I love, because even it's funny, I'm not a romance reader, but I am a big fan of the I love you moments. I always think about them and love to play them in my head, like practice the lines in my head, like especially with movies. You know, I do more so in movies than books. Like, I have the scene right before they start singing the song, in the musical Sound of Music. I have that scene, the second gazebo scene, where the captain tells Maria that he loves her and everything, and that he wants to marry her and all that. It's so sweet, and I have that scene memorized. I can't sing the song though, because I can't sing worth the heck. I can't. I don't know if I'm tone deaf or what, but I cannot sing. I've tried. But yeah, I didn't, but I don't want to, I'm trying to avoid that thing I always do where I like, when I'm a bit into a book, I see how many chapters there are in the book, and then sometimes I go to the last page to see how many pages, and then I end up spoiling myself and cheating and looking at the last sentence. And I gotta stop doing that, because sometimes I wonder if that kind of takes away some of the magic of the reading experience. Even though I love and enjoy the books I read, sometimes, it takes away the surprise. There's a little slither of the magic is gone. But anyway, that's what I read yesterday. And today, one of the things I read was, I read a little bit more Middlemarch, and I was going to go through the whole of book 1 all over again, which I got through most of it. But then at this point, I was like, actually, I am starting to remember this as I'm reading it again. And I'm thinking, let me go ahead and get to book 2. So I marked book 2. I only read, the little bit I read was basically when Dorothea finds out that, first she finds out that Sir James is in love with her, and he thinks that she loves him because they've been connecting over the house, the building of the cottages, and she doesn't. She sees him as more of a brother, and she's deluded. She does not realize that he's loved her. She's totally clueless that he's in love with her, and he thinks that her bonding with him over the cottages is her way of expressing interest in him. So the problem with Dorothea is she's book smart, but she's totally clueless about people. She doesn't realize, and I feel bad for Sir James because she finds him so incredibly annoying. I mean, yeah, they're kind of connecting with the whole cottage thing, and she's tolerant, she's, cool with him now, but it's more that, oh, I see you as a brother-in-law, as a brother, and maybe you'll be interested in my sister, and she's like, but he is totally thinking the complete opposite, and he was trying so hard to impress her, and he got her a dog, and she was like, no, I don't like the idea of domesticating animals and dogs and stuff like that, and then she's like, and she's totally surprised when he doesn't give her sister the puppy. But it's like, he doesn't want to give her Cecilia the dog that he intended for Dorothea, the one he actually likes. And so but then she finds out from her uncle, who I feel like is a little clueless too, in a lot of ways. He does not pay attention to his nieces. I mean, they're living with him, and he's told, I feel like he doesn't really know them that well. And hasn't spent enough time with them. And she has found out from her uncle that Edward Casaubon, also has feelings for her. And he's the one that she actually does want to marry. And he even writes her this letter that says he's in love with her, he wants her to be his companion, Which my issue with that is, I feel like you can't. Yeah, it's nice to have someone who has the same interest as you, and you can bond over that. As far as like friends is concerned, being friends with someone. I mean, yes. Someone if and when I ever find love and get married and all that good stuff, then yeah, I do want my guy to like stuff that I like. But I feel like I think it is true that opposites attract, and I think it makes a better marriage if you don't have every single thing in common. Of course, I think it's good, it's healthy, even, because I think it would get, after a while, be kind of boring if you liked all the same things. It provides this unique challenge to the relationship. And I'm guessing her marriage is not going to be that great to Casaubon, because of course I remember that book 1 ends with her getting married to him. And I think she starts to feel kind of restless because not a lot is going on. And and it's interesting that she feels like she wants her husband to be like her teacher, her teacher. I don't even know if does she even want romance and passion in a relationship? I mean, I know that's not everything in a marriage, but I think you need to have companionship and passion and romance. And I could see her, I think she would have been perfectly happy if she had married Sir James and then she had Casaubon as a friend. But, of course, she's stubborn, and I know stubborn people, I know stubborn people because it takes one to know one. And plus, I think, and from what Jen from Insert Literary Pun I remember hinting at is that things do not go well for Cassandra, for Dorothea. Her marriage does not turn out the way she expected it to. But then there's also Cecilia. She has very shallow reason. She's rejecting Casaubon because he's ugly. But of course she also says he's boring. If you find someone boring, then yeah, you don't want to marry a person that's boring, that you feel is boring. So I don't know, I finally decided, I remember what happened, basically. I know what's going on and stuff. I get the basic idea, and Sir James is gonna, be like, he can't even get to fathom why she would marry Casaubon. And I don't know if that woman, if the woman, Lady Cadwallader, I think that's how you say it, Cadwallader, I don't know, is she, his family, or just, maybe she's his patron? I'm not sure. Or maybe his aunt. But I don't think she does not understand this. She does not understand this, and does not get why her uncle would let her marry Casaubon. And is like, this girl, she shouldn't be the one to tell you who she should marry. Which brings me to my other thing as I'm reading this. Part of me feels like even if it doesn't turn out, everyone turns out right about that marriage, at the same time I feel like she should be able to make her own decisions. If Dorothea wants to marry this guy, let her marry this guy. It's her decision. And as an intellectual woman, she does feel that way herself, that she's thinking, this is my decision. If I want to marry this guy, then I'm going to marry this guy. Let her make her own mistakes. Don't pressure her to marry someone, if she doesn't want to marry Sir James, then she doesn't have to marry Sir James. But then like I said, on the other hand, I don't think things are going to go well for her in Casaubon. I don't think her marriage to him is going to be a major disappointment. And I think it did start to show signs of that at the end of this first book. So now I'm going to start, I think I might start book 2 in bed. bed. I don't know. It was either that one or I Capture the Castle, but I think I'll wait and just start this one in bed. And then as there's classic / literary books, I did finally start to read a little bit more of Bleak House by Charles Dickens. And as I said before, I probably will not be as eloquent with talking about it as I think her name, I want to say her name is Katie. Katie from Books and Things. Either way, it's Books and Things channel. So, although I'm thinking about watching her videos on these first 8 chapters and see what she has said. So we mostly, so far these last few chapters, we've been still spending time with Esther. And she's finally gone into Bleak House Estate with Mr. Jarndyce. Jarndyce. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. I'll have to watch Books and Things video. Like, that's one of the reasons why I want to watch her discussion videos in each of the chapters, because that way I can get the correct pronunciation of the names. Because I'm sure, being an English woman herself, she probably does have some idea of the correct pronunciation of these characters' names. But we finally got to this, and the group has the Ada, Richard, and Esther have met Mr. Jarndyce, and they're off to a pretty, decent start. It's a nice house. Mr. Jarndyce seems to be a nice guy, and they each get their own individual rooms. And then they meet Mr. What is his? Let me see if I can find his name. Mr. Who is it? Where's his name? Let's see, where is his name? It's probably one of those things that, Skimpole, Mr. Skimpole, they have met him. He's a jolly, nice guy, but Jarndyce keeps referring to him as a child. So I'm guessing he's a very immature and irresponsible person, because then he basically gets into financial troubles and asks Richard and Esther for financial assistance. And because they're both very good, nice, kind people, they decide to help him out and give their last bit of money to Mr. Skimpole. And then Jarndyce shows up and finds out what they've done, and he's like, you should not have done that. Don't help this guy. He does this all the time. He always gets into financial troubles. And next week he is going to get into more problems, and he's going to need more money. And then Esther's like, well, you said so yourself, he's kind of a child. So he can't really know any better. Which is interesting, because I think that it's kind of sad when someone doesn't know any better, that does not realize that asking people for money is wrong, and especially for people like Esther and Richard, who are it seems like they're not very well off. They're kind of poor. I mean, they just got taken in by this rich guy, and it's not like they had they had only a little bit of money, like, they, on them. So it was kind of inconsiderate, too. And then the chapter after that was chapter 8. This is the first chapter since, or chapter 7, the first chapter where we interact with some other characters again, like we did in the first couple chapters. It's called The Ghost, which is the Ghost Walk. And the first couple pages is like describing the Ghost Walk and the dogs and other animals who walk along the Ghost Walk. And we meet this elderly lady that lives on Chesney Wold with Miss Rouncewell, she's a widower, and she has children, and she's interacting with her grandson, I believe. And she's teaching him some kind of lesson or something. Or telling them the story of poor Uncle George. and they're talking to Mr. Guppy and Mr. Tulkinghorn. Kind of a lesson learned kind of that. I think that's what she's doing. So that's really that's all I've gotten so far. Again, but these classic older books, it's a little harder to figure out. It takes me a while to figure out what's going on and what's important, and especially with a book like a lot of Dickens books, I think he has quite a bit of characters that he creates in his stories. Okay, so that's as far as Rascal scratching himself. And then I still don't know what specifically. I mean, I have some idea of what I'm gonna read for the Fantasy-a-thon, but I don't know all the books I'm gonna read for Fantasy-a-thon. I'm just gonna see which ones I can get to. And there's some that I probably should get to during the Fantasy-a-thon. Although I did start thinking about this book because it's YA, and I probably could potentially get through it within a few days. Depending on his fast pace or not. I've been wanting to read this because every time Reagan talks about this book, I just get more and more intrigued by it. Or by this author, I should say. And this was actually a book from the library. It's one of those library purchases. There weren't a lot of books in that library sale, that there were only a few select books that actually interested me. This was not a library sale here in North Carolina. It was actually when we went to visit my sister, and I was very excited when I saw this one there. And it's big print. I love it when I appreciate big print. That's why I like these trade paperback size books, because the print is a little bit bigger. So I'm probably going to read this one, and it's the start of a series, and I think it's someone's debut. I think it's Cinda William Shyama's debut book. Which one of the challenges is read either a debut or a backlist book by an author, and this I think is a debut, and I have a few in that pile of books I showed you in my video for potential TBR for this readathon. I had quite a few books that were debut, but I'm not 100% sure. I also am struggling with the whole Hype Train book, picking one for the challenge of the Hype Train, because I think Hype is. She's not. Okay, she's not. You know what, my sister? I'm trying to see what my dog's doing because I don't know if I always worry about them puking in my room. So I always keep an eye on them. So I have quite a few. There's books I really want to read, and there's books that I feel like I need to finish. So that's why I can't narrow it down with all the books I picked out. But then there are a lot of the books are bigger books that will take me a long time to read. This is one of the few books in that I showed you guys that probably won't take me that long to read, as long as I'm 100% engaged in it. And I did start to, but this one, bless you, Rascal. I think this one is going to be a definite read for the readathon. Never Night by Jay Kristoff, where this young woman who, after her father gets murdered by the government, and her mother and little brother get arrested, she decides to take revenge. So she goes to someone who can apprentice her as an assassin, and then he ends up sending her to a school for assassins known as the Red Church. And she also has a shadow companion that is in the shape of a cat who follows her around and has the ability to absorb her fear. So it'll make her a better, more badass assassin. And so far, I think I'm halfway. I can't really tell it, but I think I'm halfway. She's been at the school for a while, and she's going to the classes, and each of her teachers has presented her with a very unique challenge. And they're constantly testing her and her peers all the time. And she has been warned, I think, twice now to be careful of the people at the school. Which is always the case in these kinds of situations, where it's like, especially if you are being trained for something very dark and something like being an assassin is not, it's not pretty, it's not friendly, it's pretty brutal training. And from what I've heard, Jake Kristoff does not shy away from murdering people. He does not shy away from killing people, which I think is awesome, because, you know, it's like, on the one hand, I want my favorite characters to survive, but on the other hand, I feel like it's more realistic when people die. You know, especially, I mean, like, whether it's a war or like someone's training to be an assassin, you know, that's life. And just because this is fantasy does not mean it's gonna be all happy and go happy all the time, and everything magically is okay, and everything's gonna work out for all our heroes and stuff like that. You know, there has to be some sense of realism in fantasy, and it's kind of boring if it's always gonna be like, we're adults now. I mean, I'm an adult, so I don't want to read something that's family friendly, or as I like to put it, Disneyfied. So I feel like, so yeah, and I love this book. It's just that, you know, it's not a quick read. So that's why, you know, that's why I ended up taking a little bit of a break in between the reading. But at least, though, I'm not taking too long of a break, because part of the problem is sometimes I take years of break. Like, that's partly why it took me so long to read the book It by Stephen King, because I took quite a big, huge break in between. And the same thing with each of the books in the Dark Tower series, which in that case I have decided to start over, because I don't even remember. At least with Middlemarch, I remember the stuff. But because there was such space in between each reading of the Dark Tower books, I only remember little bits and pieces. You know, I mean, once I start reading, it will all come back to me. It's all coming back to me now. And see how bad I am at singing? And she just went through a brutal test where it looked like she had been kidnapped by the enemy, and they tortured her, and then, well, she finds out it was a test, and I just realized I probably shouldn't have told you guys that. That's why I'm so bad at this. So, yeah, so that one is Nevernight is a definite. I'm gonna keep going with this one. And then I went ahead and read a little bit more, and The Demon King might be a definite too. But I did read a little bit more of this, Orcs, by Stan Nichols. And this is basically the epic fantasy from the point of view of orcs. And this is one I'm reading for, I'm considering this for a diverse read, because I feel like in the world of fantasy, orcs are marginalized. You could argue that orcs are kind of marginalized, because they are usually just the lackeys for the bad guys. They're just brute, and they growl, and they're brutal, not afraid to kill people, and just, it's like they don't have a moral compass. They're just mindless killers. And this one gives them more personalities, and more like they have passions and concerns, and they have moral compasses, and they feel, and they're capable of feeling affection for their fellow orc. Our main character is Strike. He's a general, and he has been sent by their Queen Genesta, who is half human, half orc, to retrieve this powerful scroll for them, and they end up losing, but then they end up losing the scroll. Another army takes it from them, and currently they are on the hunt for that scroll. And they cannot go back to their queen, because she is a HE double hockey stick bitch. And this is not for faint of heart. I mean, as I've said in previous videos, the one in the early chapters, there's a rape scene. Of course, you could argue that you could consider her an evil character. So she's not a good character. And Strike keeps on having these weird, bizarre dreams of this paradise for orcs. This peaceful, beautiful place where they are not used as lackeys for the quote-unquote bad guys anymore. He keeps having these, and there's the dissension in the ranks as well. I mean, they haven't betrayed Strike yet, but there's some people that don't like Strike's leadership. Like, I think Hasker. And there's also a dwarf character, Jup, who I really like, who joined the group, who joined the army. But there's some people that question, because he is a dwarf, so he's a different race, and you know how that is. People with different, if you're from a different race, there's gonna be distrust and between. Always adds for an interesting moral conflict. But like I said, I feel like this is definitely for diverse because, again, the orc characters are usually the brutes. They're the ones who the bad guys send to kill and do their dirty work until they're ready to join the fight. And this one gives them a little bit of perspective. And I also have the other book, Dwarves, for that as well, where we have a character in a fantasy stories that doesn't always have a perspective, and there's only been the Hobbit kind of gives the dwarves more of a role, and they are the main characters. But other than that, you don't really, like in other epic fantasy, the dwarves are they're not exactly sidekicks. I mean, I guess but they don't play a major role in the story. We don't know a lot about them, and they're basically grouped. There's no individuality except for, like I said, the only one I can think of is the Hobbit. Oh, and stowing the Seven Dwarves. You could say that because, I mean, they're still not the main characters, but they do have different personalities. You got Doc, who's the leader. He's the smart one. You have Grumpy, who's kind of the bitter, cynical one. You have Dopey, who's kind of a little bit naive one. And you have Bashful, who's kind of sweet and shy. And you have, etc., etc. So that's the closest. Those are the closest. But yeah. So I read at least 2 chapters of this one, and they're still trying to go and find the scroll. They've reached this place where the army who stole the scroll might be. Where is it? What is that place called? Black Rock. That's where they think their enemy, the ones who stole the scroll, might be. And one of their own has they've got wounded, and he had to get his leg amputated. And so they had to drug him. So, well, just so, because of course, getting your leg amputated is a very painful process. And it's so hard because I'm reading this and I'm forgetting that I'm dealing with orcs. Well, I guess that's both good and bad. But I keep picturing them as humans. If they're not physical wise, they don't look like humans. I should picture them looking like orcs, but I'm having a hard time with that. And like I said, I still don't know exactly which of these books I need to read. Which of these books I'm going to start reading. There's quite a few Stephen King books that I need to continue with, like The Stand, for instance, I'm probably not going to get that done for a long time, because it's almost as long as It. But I think It is just a little bit longer. I don't know. At some point this weekend, I did read a little bit of Revival, which I think I already talked about that, where they, where Charles Jacobs tells Jamie that it's time he move on and go a separate way, because Charles Jacobs is used to being traveling alone. But these weird things are starting to happen, like Jamie has had a few episodes where he's like, he kind of goes into a seizure mode and starts doing the motions of putting the drug in your arm. And this guy approaches them and saying that his wife is starting to steal, thinking things belong to her. Like, things belong to her. She has a right to certain things, so she's been stealing stuff. So I guess it also, like Jamie, it also affected her, rewired her brain a little bit. And so, but like Charles Jacobs kind of dismisses everything, and Jamie didn't tell him about the whole thing that him with the arm and stuff. So gives Jamie someone to contact for another job. And right now I'm at that point where he's doing that. He's working for this, I think it's local dive bar or something. And he also is really concerned about his brother's health. His older brother's health is one of the last few remaining people left in their family and we kind of get like hints at the future, what's going to happen in the future with his brother throughout the book. Like it's one of those books where, we're in the present day, but the character talks about like it's like he's telling the story from when he's old in the future. But then where the rest of the story, I guess it's like one big giant flashback, and as he's narrating his story, he's talking about the rest of the people in his life and like what happens to them. But in the present of where the story is taking place, everyone, So it's this bookmark. I like it. I like what it says, but it's weird. This part of it does some weird, like the ribbon and some weird thing. So I gotta read that as well. So I'm hoping to get as much fantasy-a-thon books done before we go to Virginia, because I'm going to visit my sister during spring break. Which, it's not really spring break for me, because I'm not at school anymore, so I don't do spring break. Although I never really did, at least not the way we see the cliche of how they do things, teenagers do things during spring break, or they go to the beach and party and get drunk and do stupid shit that could potentially get them killed. In fact, I recently saw on the news where that happened, where someone got them, people were drunk and knocking each other off the balcony of their hotel room, or jumping into the pool from their balcony, which is really stupid. It's like, seriously? But of course they're drunk. They're not thinking clearly. So that is what's going on with my reading wise. And my parents just got home, so now I can get back into my room and read in my room, but yet still have a little bit of sound. Like my parents watch TV, although they just left to run some errands. Because actually I put a hole in my tub, so they gotta get stuff to fix that. So they went out to run some errands to get the stuff for that. But, I'm very glad that the sun's coming. So, would love to know what you guys are reading today. Feel free to share in the comments below, and as always, I hope you're enjoying your reading. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you hadn't, and I will see you all later. Alright, bye!